So in today's video, I'm gonna show the installation of what I think is one of the largest single zone wall mount mini splits you can get. And in my case, I chose the mrcool 3-ton unit. Here it is right here. Since this is a large room, high ceilings, low insulation, and it opens the rest of the house, I wanted to get the biggest mini split I can get, and that was this one. So I'm gonna show you how I installed it. Right, so the AC arrived today. It's actually a bigger bundle than I had envisioned. Alright, so inside the box, first thing I notice is the template. The unit itself, which looks packed nice and neatly. Bigger than I imagined. The mounting hardware, remote control, and instructions. There's the condenser and lines. Came with the condensation line, and then of course the line set as well. Alright, so the first step of the installation is to mount the template, and then I will know where to drill my holes and my mounting points. Now the air handler comes with the mounting bracket pre-attached, so I just have to remove a screw and unsnap it. Now I'm just marking holes where there should be studs. Now when mounting the bracket, I inserted screws into my pre-drilled holes, and I ended up with 5 screws. Most of them were in studs, 1 or 2 were in using drywall anchors. Now I had to carefully bend the refrigerant lines about 90 degrees away from the air handler. I'm going to tape these together, keeping the condensation line down below. Now the tape at this point is just to help get the refrigerant lines and everything else through the wall. I started with the power cable because that was super long, and then carefully thread the refrigerant lines, power cable, and the condensation line through the hole while trying to mount the condenser. And this took a little effort and some coordination, and just snapped into place, and there it is. All right, getting that thing up there was definitely a two-man job. Whew. Now we can move the work outside, and the first thing here was to bend the refrigerant line sets downward. Then we could take our pre-filled refrigerant line set, uncoil it carefully, and then attach it to the line sets coming off the air handler. This was pretty straightforward. I hand threaded things first, then I came back with 2 crescent wrenches and carefully tightened them together. Alright, so now I am attaching the condenser to the concrete pad that I poured for this condenser. But instead of going straight on the concrete pad, I'm mounting it up on these 3-inch aluminum blocks. That's going to give me a little more airflow underneath, a little bit more room for things to dry out, and also if I have any leftover slack in the line set, I think I can put it right under here. But I'm attaching it to the aluminum with the stainless bolts. These are like 3/8, I think. I'm just going through and I'm using a little rubber gasket to keep the dissimilar metals apart. The stainless and aluminum should be okay, but this is probably steel up here. I'm using a little piece of rubber for a gasket. Snugging them down. Okay, so now I'm going to kick the line sets. I'm going to take the white cap off, and then the white cap off, and I'll hook that up first. I'll hand thread it on. I'll take a crescent wrench, hold it there steady to take the torque, and then I will turn this one until it's snug, and then just a pinch more after it's snug. Do the same thing with this. Take both these caps off, and then thread it on by hand, and then use the crescent wrenches. Once you get snug, just put a little bit more on it, and we should be good. Okay, so I got them on, so I'm just going to hand tight them first. Okay. Now that we got these hand tight, these are crescent wrenches. Do this until it gets snug, and then once it gets snug, I'll do it one more time, and then I'm going to do that one too. Now it's time to release the refrigerant. mrcool provided an Allen key. We got to take this off first. Take that off. Allen key. Stick it in there. It's pretty tough. Alright, it's pretty stiff. There we go. You can hear it. Hear the refrigerant. Open it all the way. Okay, put that on. Put the cap back on. And I'll do the same thing down here. Now I'm going to check with leaks using a little bit of soap and water. Looks pretty good, no leaks. Alright, time to do the electric. Take these screws off. Alright, so here's the power wire. I'm actually going to take this off, run it through some of this flex conduit before I hook it up. So basically wire these up 1, 2, 3. This is the thing going to the inside handler. So here's number 2. Take this thing off because loosen this up a little bit. Okay, already did that. And then this will slide. There we go. Slide in there and then tighten it down. Okay, and I'm gonna put 3 here and I'll put the ground here. Alright, so our red wire in this case is number 1, white wire is number 2, black wire is number 3, ground wire goes in this ground screw here. Then the next we would do our 240 volt connection. This would be one hot, this would be another hot, and this would be the ground. And that's what I have here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm using green wire here, but they're marked. These black ones are the hots, and this is the ground. And I'll put them in there, and we'll be good.
Now, one little quirk in the instructions, it did say to run 6 gauge or 8 gauge wire to the condenser. The problem with that is there's no way you could fit 6 gauge or 8 gauge wire on the condenser terminals. So I read somewhere that some people were getting away with using 10 gauge wire. So what I did is I ran 6 gauge wire all the way from the sub panel to my disconnect. I ran a 30 amp breaker here to feed 10 gauge wire that goes all the way to the air condenser, and I'm assuming that should work well. However, if anyone thinks there's a better way to do this, please let me know in the comments below.
Alright, so everything's wired up. These black wires represent the hot legs, the 2 different lines of 120, so it's 240 system. This is the ground, and these are the wires that go to the air handler, and they're installed as the instruction said. So I'm going to put the cap back on now.
Okay, so I've got everything wired up, refrigerant lines are in, everything's tightened down. Now it is time for the test run. So we're going to flip the breaker and see what happens. Yeah, I heard a little click in there. All right, let's go see what happens. Let me turn it on. Working. We're running outside. It's feeling warm, that's good. And that's feeling cold, that's good. Okay, so it's running the inside, it's running the outside. It feels like we have some heat exchange, so I think we're working. I'm gonna check one more time for leaks at these joints down here and up there, and we should be good.
So next I connected the condensation line that just snapped in place. Then I wrapped the sound deadening pads around the connection fittings, and I used the putty that was provided to fill any air gaps in the hole. And then I wrapped the rest of the insulation around the line set and made it nice and tidy before enclosing it.
Okay, so I've got the system fired up. I want to see how much power it's drawing to compare. So I've got an amp meter in there, but it's important to note that this machine can ramp up and down as it decides it needs to based on whatever, but it's pretty super hot day out. That's why I'm dressed like this. I imagine the room's hot, but let's see how many amps it's drawing now. That looks like about 17.5. So just over 17 amps right now, and it makes me feel better about having the 10 gauge wire because 10 gauge can handle up to 30 amps. So I think we're pretty solid there. Now what I'm gonna do is go check the amperage drawn on the old unit. And you gotta remember here, this is both the air condenser and the air handler. That's the total power combined. I'm gonna go test the amperage draw on the old condenser now. I'm gonna test the 5-ton unit in comparison to the mrcool unit. 5-ton. Now the unit that replaced was a 5-ton ducted system. This is a 3-ton mini split system, so obviously there's going to be some energy savings benefits there. This is a fairly efficient system. It's far more efficient than what we had, so it's going to work well for us. So I thought this system was fairly DIY doable. I have installed the 3-ton mrcool universal system before. I do think this is a little bit more DIY friendly than installing that system, mainly because you don't have to deal with ductwork. So I'm standing next to the unit now to give you an idea of the noise level. It's not too bad. The outside condenser is fairly quiet. Now, I've had this running now for several weeks. It's doing its job. It's cooling this large room very well. So we're very happy with it so far. Please share any comments down below anything that you think I should have done differently or how you might do it, or any recommendations for others that would watch this video. I greatly appreciate your input, and thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Take care. I did have a question for you professionals out there. I noticed this system was advertised to have a lower SEER than getting a comparable 3-ton system with multi-head units on it. And so I'm wondering, in the long run, would you use less electricity if you run a 3-ton multi-head unit versus this 3-ton single head unit? And in my case, I actually like the single unit, single condenser combo. I just feel like it's probably going to be easier to deal with should I ever have an issue or a strange maintenance issue. I'm just guessing it'll be easier to have the one air handler, one condenser combo. But however, if the energy efficiency is far better with the multi-zone units, might be something to think about.